After 3 years of tutoring, Macedonia was expanding, and Philip II needed his son in battle as the two of them rode off to conquer Greece. And in the years of 339, 338, 337, 336, Macedonia expanded its military and political control over Greece, over the ancient city-states, Athens and the other city-states of ancient Greece. Well, in 336, events took a dramatic turn at a wedding celebration for Philip II's daughter, because then a bodyguard rushed the king and murdered Philip II. And immediately at that moment, the leaders of Macedonia hailed Alexander as the new king of Macedonia. So Alexander was 20 years old, and he was king of Macedonia. He was the hegemon, the leader over the Greek city-states, and he was not short of ambition, nor a fine education, perhaps the finest imaginable. And Alexander had in his hands the annotated copy of the Iliad given to him by Aristotle, and it was the Iliad and Achilles' triumphs and heroism that inspired Alexander in part, and made him believe that he could carry out his father's idea of going to conquer the East, to taking revenge for Persia's impudence of having tried to conquer the Greek world. The Greek world would go to conquer Asia. Now, at this time, the successes of Macedonia under Philip II and soon under Alexander were the result of many things, not least of which was military technology, because Philip II had created and brought to actuality the notion of the powerful phalanx, which would be the conquering infantry of the Macedonian-led army. And the phalanx, this tight formation of infantry, would carry sarissas being 6-meter long or 20-meter long spears, and they'd carry them in formation. And it was said that for hundreds of years, a well-trained phalanx carrying the sarissas was absolutely invulnerable, impervious to defeat, at least from a frontal assault. And it was with the phalanx and the sarissas, and especially the training, the valor, and the inestimable quality of leadership of Alexander the Great, that Alexander went from age 20 off to conquer this vast world. He secured his base in Greece, in Thrace, and then went after Darius, after his antagonist, his foe, Darius III, to take revenge on Persia for the invasions of a century and a half earlier. And what followed was one stunning military victory after another. The heavyweight champion of conquest, never defeated in his lifetime. Each amazing victory seemingly more miraculous or amazing than the previous ones, through the valor of Alexander, his tactics, his strategy, and the strength of the Macedonian army. The first great battles with Darius was the Battle of Granicus, in which Darius broke and fled, and the Persian army suddenly scattered. Alexander didn't have his foe, didn't defeat finally or capture Darius, but he had had his first taste of victory against the vast Persian Empire. From Granicus, Alexander marched through Anatolia, down the Levant, the eastern border of the Mediterranean basin, and then across Gaza and into Egypt. And he was welcomed into Egypt as a liberator from the Persian yoke. And so the Persian Empire in Egypt quickly fell. Alexander was greeted as the liberator and the ruler of Egypt. He was now in command not only of Macedonia and Greece and Thrace and the Levant and Egypt, and he was at this point 24 years old, 25 years old. He went while in Egypt famously to an oasis close to the Libyan border in the desert, the oasis of Siwa, to consult an oracle. And the oracle at the oasis told Alexander, "You are the son of Amun-Re, the Egyptian equivalent of Zeus." This confirmed for Alexander what he thought he knew, which was he was a hero, he was a son of a god, he was destined to conquer the world. In Egypt, he established a new city on the Mediterranean coast. We know it, of course, until today as Alexandria. It would become the capital of the Hellenistic kingdom that would follow Alexander, and one of the great centers of learning and trade and commerce for centuries and centuries to come, and one of the great early centers of Christianity. But not to get ahead of our story, Alexander had to go conquer the Persians beforehand. And so he marched the troops from Egypt back across the Levant, up into West Asia, and then heading towards the stronghold of the Persian Empire. And in his second great battle of his war with Darius in 331 BCE in Gaugamela, Alexander was vastly outnumbered by the vast Persian army. But again, strategy, tactics, and unaccountable valor led Alexander to go straight for the charge for the king, for Darius. Again, Darius broke and fled, and his army disintegrated, and Alexander had won the kingdom of Persia, because from that point on, Alexander was recognized as the king of the former Persian realms of the Achaemenid Empire. And Alexander came to Babylon, came to Persepolis, came to the great cities of the East as the new ruler of almost all of the known world. Nothing could completely satisfy Alexander's appetites, though. Being master of almost the known world was not good enough for Alexander. He needed to be master of the whole world. So he continued to drive his troops eastward into today's Afghanistan, continued eastward to the Indus, into today's Pakistan. And so many fascinating aspects of this campaign, because Alexander had the genius and the sense not only to conquer, but to honor the cultures that he was conquering, even adopting clothing, habits, style, so that his goal was not completely to homogenize or to dominate or to repress the other cultures, but it was to rule over them and to be recognized by them as the legitimate ruler of these cultures. So he aimed for a kingdom of diverse cultures organized under his lead. And his generals grumbled, "Why aren't Macedonians in charge? Why are you appointing local generals? Even worse, why are you marrying local women, not Macedonian women? And why are you pushing us to do the same?" So it was very fraught conditions for young Alexander, but he continued to insist on the troops moving east until virtually he reached rebellion, especially when they confronted the great armies backed not by cavalry of horses, but of the great elephant-based kingdoms of the Indus region. And so Alexander finally consented with his generals to return back towards Macedonia and to let those who wanted to return home after this dozen years of conquest to return home. But history again took a completely unexpected course, as it had in 336 BCE, when Alexander reached Babylon and suddenly died. Died after a few days of agony, and still not understood to this day and contested to this day. Was he poisoned with some slow-acting poison? Was it typhoid fever? Was it malaria? Was it the waters of the Tigris and Euphrates that had poisoned him? Nobody knows to this day. But what we do know is that at this astoundingly young age of 33, Alexander had conquered most of the known world and was now on his deathbed. On his deathbed without any plans for succession, at which point it is said by the histories, by Plutarch and others, that the generals leaned in to ask, "Who is your successor?" And it is said that Alexander mouthed the words, "It is to the strongest." And at least this is how it came to us in history, that the generals took the message to be that they would fight among themselves, the diadochi, the successor generals, to fight among themselves for this vast empire. And as we know, these generals established kingships that were to last for hundreds of years and that were to create a lasting cultural legacy that would, in some ways, continue until the present day. In other words, spreading Greek ideas, Greek culture, Greek arts to the distant realms of Central Asia, to the regions of Afghanistan and Pakistan, and of course through the Eastern Mediterranean and Egypt and the areas near to here. The great empires included the West Asian Seleucid Empire after the general Seleucus of that name, and the Egyptian Hellenistic Empire of the Ptolemies after the general Soter Ptolemy established a kingdom in Egypt. And in the Macedonian and Greek realms, the general Antigonus established the Antigonid Hellenistic Empire. And there were several other smaller empires as well. This was the Hellenistic world. The Hellenistic world is usually dated between 323 BCE, Alexander's death, and 30 BCE. Why 30 BCE? Because that's the date of the final conquest of the last of the Hellenistic empires to fall to Roman rule. It was in the Battle of Actium in 3130 BCE that Octavius, the adopted son of Julius Caesar, defeated Mark Antony and his political and personal partner Cleopatra, the last of the Ptolemies, in battle